Malta is a small island at the heart of the Mediterranean with a widescreen history. Every wave of civilization has left its mark, making Malta a mosaic of cultures and a perfect place to discover in 48 hours. The islands are wrapped in more than 100 miles of coastline with warm, inviting water and some lovely beaches, and are sprinkled with dozens of towns and villages, many with impressive domed churches that decorate the horizon. Malta has some magnificent mansions, while side streets can take you deep into the past. Just 3 hours flying time from Britain lands you at Lucca International Airport, which is in the south of Malta and very handy for everywhere. So, if you want to get to the capital, Valletta, as I do, you can either get a taxi, which is €15 one way, and the good thing is they've got a sign on there saying taxi. If you're still not sure, have a look at the registration number. It always begins taxi. If you're on a budget, you might prefer the bus. There's a clue. The registration begins bus, and also it looks like a bus. To travel to the capital, Valletta, costs €2.20, or you can travel everywhere you want to all day long for just €2.60. Where am I? Well, 60 miles south of Sicily, 160 miles east of Tunisia, and equidistant between Gibraltar and the mouth of the Suez Canal at Port Said in Egypt. The island of Malta, along with Gozo and Comino, together are smaller than the bit inside the M25, but they are packed with all kinds of diversity and excitement. The island's most enticing location is the Shara Palace in the former capital, Mdina. As the co-owner, Susan Zammit Tabona, told me, it's where royalty and celebrities stay, with some real die-hard loyalists.
We had Bruce Willis here, who didn't move out of his room for 4 days. You know, I think he was staying in this room too. Having been brought up and bred in Mdina, the houses in Mdina breathe differently. So, you know, there were things that they couldn't see. And I said, look, I've lived in an old house in Mdina all my life, so I know how these buildings work. And so anyway, but it was done with a lot of love.
Now, I've been lucky enough to take a hike in some great cities around the world, but nowhere is the process simpler than here in Valletta. Trust me, I've checked. I'm at the start of St George's Street, later Kingsway, now Republic Street. It's exactly 1 kilometre long. You could walk it in 10 minutes, but there's loads to see along the way. What I love about Valletta is that it's a distillation of commerce and culture with endearing evidence of the British connection. The UK took control 2 centuries ago until Malta gained independence in 1964, and the city is full of grand Baroque flourishes. When Maltese tour guides bring Italian groups to St John's Co-Cathedral, they tell them, prepare yourself for the most beautiful, sumptuous church you've ever seen. And of course the Italians don't believe them. They've got so many lovely churches of their own. But just come and see what you think. For a good definition of the word Baroque, look no further than this gorgeous building. From the extravagant marble floors, through the explosion of gilt, to the intricate ceiling paintings. It is a wonder of the human spirit. This is what happens when you fuse military might with religious ambition. A confection to trump the Italians.
You'll rarely walk alone in the Maltese capital. What brings the crowds to Valletta is the sense of theatre in the street life and the architecture created by the Knights of St John. This Christian military order began by caring for pilgrims to Jerusalem and took part in the Crusades. But in the 16th century, the Knights settled in Malta and began to transform the island with magnificent structures such as the Grand Master's Palace. For centuries, this was the power base for the entire Mediterranean, the palace of the Grand Master of the Order of St John. And today, it's Malta's equivalent of the White House, the office of the President. Further down Republic Street, there's the chance to explore a fine aristocratic townhouse that's still occupied by a fine aristocrat. Marchesa Francis Di Piero gave me a tour and told me the history of this great house.
The house was built about 400 years ago. 200 years it belonged to the Italian Knights. It was built by the Admiral of the Order, and then in the 18th century bought by a Maltese family. And we show people the first floor. In these houses, the first floor is always called the piano nobile, where the main nice rooms are. And then we go underneath the house to see a big cistern for water, which all the houses, early houses have. And it was used as a bomb shelter in the Second World War.
The hike along Republic Street is so easy, there's even a sign telling you where to stop. But look, do go and have a quick look over the wall, because you can see St Elmo's Fort, which was captured by the Turks in the Great Siege, and it later stood in for a Turkish prison in the film Midnight Express. For lunch, you can't do better than come to the Caffè Cordina right in the heart of Valletta and order a pasticci. These are the scrumptious Maltese pastries, often eaten for breakfast, but you can have one for lunch. Go on.
The Caffè Cordina is busy 7 days a week, and its elegant interior has become something of a tourist attraction in its own right, with paintings on the ceiling depicting episodes in Malta's turbulent history.
For my lunch on the run, I've actually moved out to the terrace because, of course, Malta is very much an outdoor culture because of the very benign climate. And I've got my pasticci. There is a pea pastitz, there's a cheese pastitz. To wash it down, the local soft drink, Kinney. Acquired taste. And neither of these is pastitz sell by date because they're all baked on the premises.
Valletta is set to be European Capital of Culture in 2018 on account of its heritage and creativity. But before then, you can immerse yourself in the amazing antiquity of the Maltese Islands.
Today, Valletta is full of cultural treasures, but it didn't even exist in 1565, which was when the Ottoman Great Siege was finally defeated. The very next year, the Order of St John decided to build a new home city on this very spot, and they named it in honour of the Grand Master at the time, Jean de Valette. Do you like what he's got around his neck, by the way? Found it in a rough guide. The Auberge de Provence, built in 1575 to house the Knights of St John from southern France. Today, it's the home of the National Museum of Archaeology, which goes pretty much as far back as you possibly can in the span of human history.
The museum is small and elegant, as are many of its exhibits. It contains some of the very earliest three-dimensional representations of the human figure, such as the Sleeping Lady.
5,000 years old and still in pretty good shape. No, not me, the Venus of Malta, this beautiful clay statuette that has been around since 3000 BC. From the waterfront in Valletta, you can get a water taxi, actually more like a water bus, across to Vittoriosa. However, you can also pay €3 or €4 for a ride in a Daisa, which is this beautiful kind of Maltese gondola. And that's what I'm going to try. Hello. Thank you. Oh,
lovely.
There's no better way to appreciate the magnificence of Valletta and the splendour of the harbour. There's also no better way to get across to Vittoriosa for a drink at one of the loveliest bars on the whole island. Sottovento, which means under sail, and it's the perfect place to begin, if I may, a crusade to taste the best Maltese wines. And then, to sharpen your appetite still further, wander through the atmospheric back streets of Vittoriosa.
Vittoriosa predates the capital, Valletta, and it's where the Knights of St John first based themselves when they came to Malta nearly 500 years ago. The narrow lanes and sense of calm take you back through the centuries. This is one of my favourite corners of the island. Malta's spectacular shoreline provides plenty of opportunities for waterside drinking and dining, but the most elegant restaurants crowd around St Julian's Bay. This chic and cheerful location, together with an atmosphere of friendly rivalry between chefs, means you can eat splendidly on fresh seafood, prepared with flair, imagination and stardust.
This dish is going on my A-list. Talking of which, Malta has always had a role as an outpost of Hollywood, and Peppino's has always had a role as the place that the stars come to dine. Madonna, Brad Pitt, Daniel Craig and most recently Tom Hanks have all eaten here. But for a sad piece of movie history, why not join me for a nightcap back in Valletta? This is the pub. No, it's the pub. That's its name, the pub. And it's the pub where Oliver Reed came to on the 2nd of May 1999. He was in town filming Ridley Scott's Gladiator, and he decided to have a half of shandy. Very sadly, in this very seat, he passed away. So come in here and drink to the health of the Hellraiser, who is now in heaven. Heavens! For my second day in Malta, I'm venturing beyond the present capital, Valletta, and starting in the former capital, Mdina. It's known as the Silent City, but not today, because I'm outside the Cathedral of Peter and Paul, and there's a wedding taking place. Hooray! I'm not invited, but I'm going to have a quick peek.
It's said that after St Paul was shipwrecked on Malta while on his way to Rome, this was the location where he met the Roman governor of the island. It's since become Malta's principal place of worship. But Malta's spirituality goes much further back than that.
Before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, the temple at Mnajdra was created by the Neolithic people on the south coast of Malta, and it is still resonant with the echoes of the past. Beneath my feet are the remains of a Bronze Age village, which I guess makes this a kind of Bronze Age village green. Now, Malta is one of the most densely populated nations in Europe, yet here on the southern shore there are some vast open spaces. The cliffs at Dingley, some of the finest coastal scenery in the Mediterranean. If you prefer a walk in a theme park, well, look at this Popeye Village. In 1970, the film director Robert Altman was looking for somewhere to film Popeye, starring, of course, Robin Williams. He happened upon Anchor Bay. They built the set. They simply didn't bother to take it down again. Ahoy! Malta is an open-air nation, of course, and therefore lots of the shopping takes place in open-air markets. I've come to Marsaxlokk in the far south of the island, and what happens here Monday to Saturday is you have a tourist market, lots of souvenirs. Then on Sunday, everybody comes to town to buy all sorts of fresh stuff. Until 2008, Malta had its own currency, the lira, one of very few worth more than a British pound. Since then, of course, it's joined the euro system, but with a twist. There is a Maltese euro, and it's an ideal souvenir. Price, €1. Some of the fish on sale here is still caught using the traditional Maltese fishing vessel, the Lutsu, and what's distinctive about it is this, the Eye of Osiris, supposed to ward off evil and bring good fortune. AD 1530, the year that the Knights of St John first arrived on the island of Malta, and also the name of the trattoria that will serve you up anything from a wedding breakfast to a Sunday brunch. It's an Mdina institution, and this is a Maltese platter, which includes goat's cheese, roasted Maltese sausage, Maltese bread, some capers there, Maltese biscuits, a little bit of artichoke, along with a very nice coffee. It's going to be less than €10. Splendid value. Mediterranean island hopping, one of the joys of travel, and happily in the Maltese islands it's very easy. Ferries shuttle between the northwest corner of Malta and the southeast corner of Gozo 24 hours a day, taking just 25 minutes, and giving views of the third populated island, Comino, along the way.
The Mediterranean has sculpted the shores of Comino beautifully. The sea has carved out caves to intrigue the sightseer and entice swimmers to take the plunge.
There's two reasons to come up here to the Shara Plateau. The first is the beautiful views that you get across the island of Gozo. The second, though, is perhaps rather more important, a World Heritage Site, the oldest freestanding monumental building on the planet.
The name Gargantua derives from the later belief that only giants could have created the structures. A good guide, like Vince de Bono, helps you appreciate that what might look like a pile of old stones is in fact an amazing achievement of an ancient island people.
This is the oldest Neolithic monumental temple ever built, which survives to this very day. It was great not just because of the effort needed to move all those giant stones and put them into place, but because society, which until then didn't have anything of this sort, someone came with the inspiration and the motivation for the rest of the clan in order to do all this.
Gozo's history isn't just rich, it's also deep, delving further back into the past than anywhere else in Europe. The island's capital, Victoria, is a modest but alluring city, full of lanes in which to get cheerfully lost, and it's dominated by a citadel whose honey-coloured stones soften its military might. Today, like the rest of Gozo, Victoria provides a welcome, serene escape.
Sometimes here in the middle of the Mediterranean you feel as though you're on the edge of the world. But then you go a little further, turn a corner, make a new discovery, meet some more friendly, hospitable people. The Maltese Islands are gentle and generous and well worth 48 hours of anybody's time.
was in town filming Ridley Scott's Gladiator, and he decided to have a half of shandy. Very sadly, in this very seat, he passed away. May possibly have had 3 bottles of rum and several arm wrestling matches, but I wasn't here. The Maltese Islands are generous and giving. No, they're not generous and giving, generous and gentle. Of course they are. You dolt! What are you doing here? Get somebody else. Anybody can present programmes here? Right, okay.